Now it's correct. You have to go
Yeah.
off this side of the screen to get to the other one.
Yeah, so it's recording now.
Perfect.
Did we start already, everyone? Happy
We
Sabbath.
started, we just got so that I'm recording.
Perfect.
So let's begin with prayer. And dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for this Sabbath day and the time that we are living in, which is unprecedented. We know, Lord, that there's many honest souls looking for truth. We just pray, Lord, that you can use us as your instruments. We ask for your Holy Spirit to be our teacher and to give us wisdom. We pray for each person here in this meeting, even though it's we're very far away physically. We just ask, Lord, that you can unite us with your Spirit. And we pray for this message that you've given us. We ask, Lord, that we can carry it faithfully. Thank you for all the things that we're doing in our lives. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So welcome, everyone. And what I suggest people do is you can turn off your, mute your mic, but anybody who ends up wanting to speak, I believe it will show up that they're going to speak. They should supersede the image on the main picture. So I'm getting used to using this, as you can see.
How do I get my cursor over here?
Over there?
Yeah.
Just pull it that way. Like now it's set up correctly. You have to go down to the bottom of the screen. Okay, you're over there, aren't you?
Down to the bottom of the screen. And then, okay. Now,
Yeah,
I just wanted to close that.
Here, just so you picture it, love. Your screen's sitting right here like this.
Okay, so who am I hearing talking? Okay, so we're going to begin here, and I'm going to be switching between these screens here at times. So,
Your head is awfully low on the screen,
yeah,
Theodore.
that's because I'm going to stand up.
Okay, perfect.
So hello everyone,
Okay.
and I'm going to move this chair out of my way. Now, what Elder Jeff had presented much of what I'm going to present here, but I'm going to go through it in a bit more detail and sort of review some of the things that he skipped by very quickly. And we did have a Bible study last night where we looked at this as well. And so I organized all my slides on a PowerPoint presentation, which is going to make things a little bit easier. But before we get into that part of it, I wanted to review what I had done last time. So I'm going to bring this up as a PowerPoint, and we're going to look at it. So last time at the beginning, which didn't end up getting recorded, I presented some things dealing with the coronavirus predictions as far as how it will progress. So I'm going to bring this up again on this screen. And make it a little bit bigger. Just a bunch of lines there. I'm just going to quickly put these lines on here. They're not in any particular order. Needed to organize that a bit more. So what we see here is last time on March 27th, I had used the number of deaths that had occurred by that time, which was 27,300 deaths worldwide. And I made an assumption that there was a 1% mortality rate, and that there was 20 days from the time that a person is first infected until they die. And that's pretty well been established as you look at the statistics. And so I had gone back and looked at March 27th, 2020, and said, well, if there was 27,300 deaths, that meant there must have been 100 times more cases. And so I just basically added 2 zeros to show the number of actual cases that existed back on March 7th. Now, the number of confirmed cases were much lower. That is, the people who had actually been confirmed, much lower. Now, I hear somebody's making noise there, so they can turn there. Maybe I can mute everybody. Somebody's sound is...
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, thanks. So with the 106,000 confirmed cases on March 26th are not the actual number of cases. So this is the actual number of cases. And at that time, there was 3,500 deaths. So in 20 days, it had increased substantially. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but basically, to figure out how many deaths were going to happen in the future, I calculated the rate of increase of cases that was occurring in this period based on the increase of deaths that was occurring. And then I made this prediction for April 16th that there would be nearly 3 billion actual cases and 19,200,000 confirmed cases and 873,600 deaths. Now, this is not taking into account mitigation efforts because we couldn't take those into account because we didn't know how they're going to work. So this is not an actual prediction. This is just saying, if we continued on as we were, this is where we would be by April 16th. Now, I've done the same thing here again. I've taken today's date, and right now there's 62,000 deaths, 1,155,150 confirmed cases. And I've taken the 62,000 deaths, added 2 zeros, gone back to March 14th, 2020, and looked at the confirmed cases and the actual deaths, but took these actual cases and multiplied them to show the number of cases that would actually occur based on the rate of growth. And then I projected that into the future 21 days. And so this projection is much less than what you saw here last week. And that's because the mitigation efforts have slowed the progress of the virus. Now, the number of actual cases then in 21 days, 3 weeks from now, based on the present rate of growth that we can observe, is 793,600,000 actual cases. So that's less than 1 billion. And the number of confirmed cases at that time should be about 19,200,000. And the number of deaths will be 992,200. So the number of deaths here is still going to be very high. Now, this would have been a week earlier. So you can see the number of deaths are based upon what we see happening 21 days earlier. But we expect that the actual number of cases won't be as high. So if we continue doing this every day, you would start to see, because of the mitigation efforts, you would start to see these factors influencing how many people are going to actually die. So it's just an interesting detail in analysis of trying to understand what's happening and how the mitigation is actually slowing the progress of the virus. Now, is there any questions about that? Does anybody have any comments about the statistical analysis of this virus? It's sort of an aside, but it is an interesting thing to look at. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so some people have thought I've been making like a prediction exactly how many people are going to die, but I'm just basically analyzing statistics. And as we move through this, every week I'm going to try to look at it. I've been looking at it actually on a regular basis and trying to project based on current trends, current data, where we will be 21 days from now.
Theodore?
Yep.
With the mitigation efforts that are in place, though, that still means that there's a group of people out there that have not been exposed to this virus who have been staying home. So
yeah,
when they get out in the public again, does that just start up again, or it starts up at a lower number, or how
Yeah.
does that work?
So that's a good question. So part of what I haven't actually put into this analysis is the fact that once people are exposed, and you can see the large number, if you've had 1 million people who are infected with the virus, exposed, it doesn't mean there are going to be actual cases. Those people, of course, once they recover, you're just going to be running into people who are already exposed. So you're not going to be running into people. You're not going to be passing it on to somebody new. You're going to be passing to somebody who's already had it or already has been exposed. So as you get closer and closer towards more and more people being infected, the rate of infection slows. The transmission rate gets lower and lower because people are already have it. So I haven't taken that into account. And that's another factor that actually, when you predict into the future, you're going to have less people with the virus than if you don't take that into account. So what would happen, the problem that I have is in Canada, the virus has not really spread everywhere. It's obviously spread in some localities. And if you do the mitigation efforts too early, you're just delaying it. Not enough people are actually getting infected in Canada. And so you've shut the economy down too soon. That's my view on what's happened in Canada. But in other places, they didn't do it soon enough, like in Italy or in Florida or in New York. So these places are going to be very hard hit because too many people got sick too soon. But it's a very difficult thing, like for a government to know when you don't know all the facts, how much should we shut things down? We're shutting things down in Alberta, where I live, based on what's happening in Ontario and Quebec and in southern Alberta, not so much where I live. But what you're going to have happen is eventually most people will have got the coronavirus. The thing is, you don't want them to get it all at once, because then the hospital system's overwhelmed and they have to. And a lot of people are dying. In Italy, people have looked at the statistics of the deaths that have been occurring in Italy, and they say that there's twice as many people dying at home untreated that are not counted in their death statistics because they're not even allowed into the hospital. There's no room for them. But they're not counted because autopsies have not been done to show what they died of. So when you have the hospital system overwhelmed, as Italy has and Spain, there's no way that you can treat everyone. And so not everyone gets counted as in the statistics. So, the death rate could actually be higher than the official death rate, or mortality rate. No, nobody's really sure what it is. I've always been assuming about 1%. That's sort of a conservative. It could be higher.
So then these people would not be getting autopsied. And if they're not kept in a cooler, are they just getting buried and it's done with, or do we know? I mean, or is that even important?
People are either being cremated or buried. Yeah, but the thing is, autopsies aren't done. They don't have time to do it, and they don't have time to store people. They don't have space to store people. So, but the actual people die. They know how many people die, and I believe in Italy, it's twice as many this March as last March, and half the numbers half of the increase, less than half of the increase, is coronavirus official deaths. So that means there's another half of that increase, which is not. So it's a lot of people are dying from other things.
They're running out of space in churches to store them.
Yeah. So it's obviously, we don't know all the facts about everything. I'm just sharing what I know about this. The fact is, this is a bad situation. It's not something that, is just going to be, and I think we've all been convinced of that now. It's not just the seasonal flu. It's not something that's just going to disappear anytime soon. Okay, so let's go to our basic study, unless somebody else has a comment.
Theodore, I have a basic question / comment.
Yeah.
There is almost an unsaid assumption in everything that is said not just by us, but by the world, that everybody's going to get this. Oh, well, if it, because we shut down too soon, then the population didn't get it. Or if you didn't get it, or if when you get it at some point in time later, you'll just infect others. There's an unsaid, so at least that's what I think I'm hearing, that everybody's going to get this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, most everybody's going to get it at some point. You just don't want it all at once.
but I'm thinking, so not to be naive, but there is something that will not come nigh unto us. So I'm thinking that, you know, some of us will not get this.
Well, yeah, some people won't get it, but even if you do get it, you're not going to necessarily get sick. So it's not whether you get it or not, it's whether it's going to affect your health. Now this slide's not going to work this way, so need to have to show it like this. So we're going to look at a slide here, and I don't know if everybody can see it. It depends on the device that you're using. But this is just an overview of some of the line that we have, and some of it's missing, but not sure why. Because this is going back to October 13th. It doesn't show it there, but this is going back to October 13th, 2018, from where the 395 days was counted going to November 9th. And what I'm doing a study on here is I'm doing a study on the March 27th. So it's kind of a continuation of last study, but with some more detail and some more clarity that we've received over the last week from a number of different people. So when we look at this March 27th, there's this 391.5 days, and then there's this September 7th, where Elder Jeff woke from his sleep or came out of retirement, out of hiding. And this period of time here, which is 329 days, if it's divided in half, the center of it is March 27th, 2019. So this was noticed by me on September 7th. I noticed this March 27th. Now, at that time, we hadn't developed this whole history. I did see the March 27th, 2021, based upon 252 days. So we know that on November 9th, 2019, when this was found, a couple of weeks later, we discovered July 18th, 2020. And it was Stephen Jameson who noticed it was 252 days. And then he extended another 252 days to March 27th, 2021. He hadn't at that time fully developed all the reasoning of this 777 days going to December 25th. But we know that this is something that, you know, we're really solid on now. There's been lots of presentations on the 777 days. Now, we have this March 27th, 2021, which is still future. And it's from that date that you count 273 days to December 25th. And that March 27th is a symbol of 273, because written as the 27th day of the third month, it would be 273. Same, of course, with this March 27th, 2019. Now, there's a March 27th that's in the center of these. Now, this March 27th is the one that has just passed. That was last Friday, so 8 days ago. And it was on that day that we first started really understanding the March 27ths, especially what each of them mean, but especially what the one meant. Now, we had noticed a little bit before that the Seventh-day Adventist Church had begun, here, I'm just going to tip down so people want to see me here, had begun 100 days of prayer. So on March 27th, the Seventh-day Adventist Church began 100 days of prayer, which is going to end on July 4th. And it started to become evident when that happened that there was something special about this March 27th. Now, it's at the center of this, and we're going to look at this in more detail, but I just wanted to show you this in this whole context of this picture, because this is about the message that's going to be given to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, I'm going to go through a few other slides here, and this I'm going to make a little bit bigger. But again, I got to set this up so all the lines show up in proper order. I have to order them. I don't know if anybody knows about PowerPoint, but now this was noticed by Stephen Jameson, or part of it. So Jeff had been presenting September 7th, 2019, and the 63 days going to November 9th, 2019, and then a further 63 days going to January 11th, 2020. Now, this is when Jeff understood Daniel chapter 11, basically, if you want to look at it that way. For him, the message came together, and for the first time, he had clarity about Daniel 11. And Daniel 11, the interesting thing about it is that we had started studying Daniel 11 and we got sidetracked. And that sidetracking of Daniel 11, we sorted out the precious from the vile, and by January 11th, we had got back on track. That's the way that I understand it. Now, Stephen Jameson noticed something, and he noticed that from January 11th, 2020 to March 27th, 21 was 63 weeks. So he's taking this 63 days and multiplying it by 7. So it still becomes a symbol and connects March 27th to January 21. But he also noticed when Elder Jeff wrote these dates, he didn't write them like this, like I've written them up here. He wrote them as 9/7, 11/9, and 1/11. And Stephen Jameson noticed, I think it was him, maybe it was Odilio. I think it was Odilio, actually. One of them, it was Odilio. He noticed that if we added these dates together, they came to 327. And 327, this is the American way to write dates, the month and then the day. So if you take 327 and you divide it as month and day, this would be this date here, March 27th. But I noticed that if we took these dates and we inverted them into the European and the official Canadian style, where you go day and month, day and month, day and month, and you added them together as 79, 911, and 111, they would add up to 1,101. And if you put the dash here, you would get the way that we also write dates, the 11th day of the first month. So just this system here of putting these dates together to create the beginning and the end is something that is obviously not, you couldn't really manufacture this. I mean, you probably could have figured it out and made it up, but these events are not arbitrary events these events were chosen for us. So Jeff did not decide on these dates based on these numbers. And often we're accused of doing that. We do an analysis of some dates and they say, well, you arrived at those dates based on some numbers, but there's no way we chose these dates because of their ability to create the connection between these two dates.
How do they add to 327? Because I see when you add the 7, the 9, and 11, you get 27. But how do you come to 3?
So you add 97 plus 119 and 111. So you add those together, 97 plus this equals 327.
I see that now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the question there. Now I'm going to look at this other one. Now this is showing us something else regarding this March 21st, the center one. So you can see that we're marking these different March 20. What's that?
March 27th.
27th. Yeah. So this March 27th, 2020. It was noticed that it's 126 days to July 31st, 2020. Now, July 31st, 2020 is 13 days after July 18th. Now we know July 18th is the 26th day of the 4th month, and July 31st is the 10th day of the 5th month. How we originally came to July 18th, 2020 was using Ezekiel's prophecy, and we came to actually July 18th Julian, which this is. July 31st is July 18th on the Julian calendar. And we used the symbol of the 10th day of the 5th month. And then we used Ezekiel's prophecy to come to July 18th Gregorian, which is the 26th day of the 4th month, and that's the symbol from Revelation 9. Now, here I just have this analysis, which maybe is not that important. But one of the things about March 27th is that we have a Julian and a Gregorian date, just as we do for July 18th and 31st. And so if you go from March 27th, 2020, and you go 13 days, you come to the Julian date, March 27th, and the Gregorian date, April 4th. And my view is that there's always these connections between the Julian and the Gregorian date. And I'm going to look at that in 2019 as well. Now, the Mayan date here, the reason why that's significant is it has the symbol of 13.0.7.7.7. 777 is a symbol of this line here. And the 13 is the symbol of rebellion and of Islam. Now, I've also divided this in roughly this 100 days of prayer that starts on March 27th, 2020. I didn't really write it in as 100 days of prayer, but it ends on July 4th. And July 4th, of course, is a symbol of the United States. It's Independence Day. And you can count this different ways. Actually, if you count from March 27th to July 4th, it's actually 99 days in a cardinal count, because they're counting March 27th as the first day of prayer. So you can divide this, though, into two periods of 50 days. So this one is 49 and 50, going to May 15th, and this one is 50. Now, this wasn't me who did it, but the center date, if we look at the Mayan date, and I'd actually made a typo on this before, but if we take the last three numbers of this Mayan date and we multiply them, we get the number 126. And so it gives witness to this 126 days that goes from March 27th to July 31st. There's also this little chiasm in here, which I'm not going to go through in detail, but we had also arrived at the date July 10th, and July 10th if we wrote it 10th day in the 7th month for our calendar, it would be a symbol of the Day of Atonement or the close of probation. And what I would think is happening here, if you take this symbol and you look at this in context of what's going to be coming in 8 days, July 18th, and then another 13 days, this is a period of time in which God's people are being tested. So any thoughts on this, these diagrams while they're up still? Any questions?
What? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
There is a new couple online.
Yeah.
Can you maybe just in a quick sentence or two, just tell them what you're doing here?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm analyzing. Who's the couple?
Lorraine and her husband.
Okay. So, hello, Lorraine and her husband, whatever his name is.
Carlton.
That?
Carlton.
Carlton. Hi, Carlton. Nice to see you. Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at, there's a lot of information that's gone by. But what we're looking at is that God is been preparing a message to help reform the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the members specifically, because we do believe that the leadership has already been tested. And now the members are going to be tested, and we have a coming Sunday law. But even before that comes, there are tests that are arising. And the question is, what is the message that we have to give to Seventh-day Adventists to prepare them for that test, to warn them about what's happening? So the number 273 comes from Numbers chapter 3 and Acts 27. And there are studies on that. And Acts 27 shows that the 273 refers to the symbol of the Levites. And in Numbers 3, that's very clearly seen, because it's the difference between the number of the firstborn of the Levites, or the number of Levites, and the firstborn of all the rest of the children of Israel. So this number 273 becomes a symbol, but it shows up in dates as a symbol and part of a structure. So hopefully that helps a little bit to understand what it is that we're trying to do. Now, my burden is, as a Seventh-day Adventist, is to how do we get Adventists to understand the time that they're in, and to not get caught up in crazy ideas, because there's a lot of crazy ideas going around, and lots of fanaticism that exists, and to try to get them back to the foundation of Adventism to guide them in understanding what's coming. So for us, understanding the Bible and the spirit of prophecy means that all the old light that God has given us is solid, and any new light has to agree with old light. So somebody watching this for the first time might think this is really off the wall. All of this is founded on established Adventist understanding of truth. So we're never removing anything that Adventists believe. We're just understanding it in a deeper way. So it could be a little difficult to understand at first. Okay, so was there any thoughts about this 126 days from March 27th, 2020, going to July 13th, 2020? I can move on to the next slide.
I just wanted to, if you would clarify why you put 7 days between July 4th and July 10th.
Instead of 6.
Yeah.
Because I'm counting just the way they did at the beginning for the 100 days of prayer. They counted the first day as 1, not as 0. And so that's what I'm doing here with July 4th. I'm counting the first day as 1, not as 0. Okay? And there's reasons why we do that. There would be a long explanation, but this is actually something that has continually happened in trying to understand the symbolism of here. This is actually 7 days. So from July 4th, if you count that as day 1, July 10th is the 7th day. And I have here the structure of 49 days and then 50 days. So this is a symbol of the Jubilee, right? So the Jubilee is 49 days and then 50 days. Here I have a symbol of the week and then the octave of the week. So 8 days, 7 days and 8 days. They're both symbols of a week. Okay, so that was a very good question. Thanks. Now,
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is that? The 126 days, is that the prayer, the amount of prayer days?
They have set up 100 days of prayer. So that 100 days of prayer is going to end on July 4th. But there's a further 26 days that go to July 31st. And July 31st, this symbol, the 10th day of the 5th month, if you look at Ezekiel chapter 20, let's go there to Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 1. And this is where we first arrived at this. Now, the whole study on Ezekiel is quite detailed because I go through the entire chronology of Ezekiel, all the different dates in his book, and the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 4. But in Ezekiel 20, verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass in the 7th year, in the 5th month, and the 10th day of the month, that certain of the elders of Israel came to inquire of the Lord and sat before me." So this date, the 10th day of the 5th month, Ezekiel is predicting in his book the date for the destruction of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was destroyed on the 10th day of the 5th month, 4 years after this prophecy was given in Ezekiel 20. So if you look in Ezekiel and you look in the Bible for the 10th day of the 5th month, you'll see that it shows up as the date for when the temple was destroyed, when it was burned to the ground. Now that was in 586 BC, but the temple was also And I'm going to just draw this here. So I'm going to get rid of this screen here, and I'm going to draw this for people. So this is a very short study on Ezekiel. But Ezekiel begins on the 5th day of the 4th month with his first vision. And he, in this first vision, in Ezekiel chapter 4, he lies on his left side for 390 days. And that ends on the 10th day of the 5th month, 1 year later, which in that year, this date lines up with August 15th. This date is July 21st. And this is in Millerite history in 1844. This date, the 5th day of the 4th month on the biblical calendar, July 21st, is Boston. It's the Boston meeting where Samuel Snow presented the Midnight Cry. On August 15th, this is the date in Millerite history where the Midnight Cry was empowered at Exeter camp meeting. But these symbols here in Ezekiel are also symbols in Millerite history. Now, he has his third vision over here on the 10th day of the 5th month. That's the chapter we just read. 10th day of the 5th month. Now this is 592 BC. This is 591. And this is 590 BC. And Jerusalem is destroyed. The temple is destroyed on the 10th day of the 5th month in 586 BC. But the temple is also destroyed in 70 AD on the 10th day of the 5th month. So this is when the temple is destroyed by Babylon. This is when the temple is destroyed by Rome. And so this symbol of the 10th day of the 5th month also shows up throughout history. It's the day that the place that became Mexico City was conquered. It's also when Constantinople was taken back by the Eastern Roman Empire from the Western Roman Empire. And there's other significant cities that were destroyed on the 10th day of the 5th month in history, on the biblical date. So this symbol of the 10th day of the 5th month is a symbol of the destruction of Jerusalem. And we've just extended this and said at the end of the world, Jerusalem represents the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church is going to be tested. And when it's tested, the church itself as a structure will no longer exist. So it appears as if it's about to fall, but it will not fall. Because it's not about the church structure. It's about the people in that church. And so that's what we're pointing to with July 31st, 2020. Does that answer your question?
Yes, a little.
Okay, it's a lot of information, but let's go back to the screen here. I'm going to go to the next slide as well. So on the next slide, oops. So this is something which is a study on the 2520, and it's written in a little bit different way. So here we have, there's the 2520 for Israel that starts in 723 BC, and I'm just looking at the length of that where it goes to 1798. So 1798 is the end of 2520 years for Israel. And for Judah, the 2520 begins in 677 BC, and it ends in 1844 on October 22nd. Now, we know there's this prophetic mirror, and I don't have the years in between here, which I could have, but there's 19 years between the start of this 65-year period. So I was just simplifying this here. And then there's 46 years. And at the end, there's 46 years and 19 years. And that 19 years ends in 1863. And this is the establishment of the Seventh-day Adventist Church as God's denominated people. Now, the number of years from 742 BC to 1863 is 2,604 years. This is a symbol of the 26th day of the fourth month. Now we had counted 126 years to 1989, and after the fact, we noticed this 126 years, and this 126 years, when added to the 2,604 years, creates 2,730 years. And it's this number here that's significant, because 1989 begins a new line that's going to be about a message to God's people, to the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Which is done in 11:40.
Yeah. Here, 1989, that's, November 11th, 1989. And then we have this other 2,760 days. This is taken from Acts 27, and that goes to 2019. And so it ties this 30 years, is this period of time from November 9th, 1989 to November 9th, 2019. That is this preparatory period for this message. This is the number of years that Joseph was before he went before Pharaoh. And this is the number of years that Jesus was when he was baptized. And so this movement from 1989 to 2019 is now prepared to give a message. And so that's what's been happening since November 9th. We've been going through this process of growth and development, but now we're actively beginning to give this message. So I just wanted to point out this 2,703, which again is a symbol of the Levites, but also of March 27th. Now, I'm going to go through this one here. Now, one of my views is that anybody in this message should have, they should have evidences in their own life that God is leading them. Now, those evidences aren't going to be necessarily chronology, because not everybody's a chronologist. But for me personally, I've had experiences that show that, now this is not proof of anything, but I just want to show this. So this is about the Mayan calendar. Now, does everybody remember back in December 21st, 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world according to the Mayan calendar?
Yes, I do remember.
And of course, the Mayan calendar didn't really end that day. It's just one of their Bactuns ended. That's a period of a certain number of days had ended, and it went from the 12th Bactun to the 13th Bactun. And so that date, December 21st, 2012, was 13.0.0.0.0 on the Mayan calendar. It didn't go back to 0. It just went from 12, 19, 19, 17, 19 to 13.0.0.0.0. Okay. Now, if you count from that date, 126 days, you come to April 26, 2013. So April 26th is a symbol of the 26th day of the fourth month. So that Mayan calendar has significance in biblical prophecy. Now, there's a lot in here I don't really want to go into, but I do want to look at one thing, and this has to do with the center 2020, the March 27th, 2020. So this is my own personal line. The first time I presented in this message was October 5th, 2012, and 2,730 days later is March 27th, 2020. So for me personally, this March 27th has symbolism. Anybody have a question? I hear somebody's mic on there. Okay. Now, each of us should have something that God is showing us that we're in the right place. And those can be different types of experiences, understanding of certain truths. As you dig in the Bible, you need to find something that is your own, that you have found. You cannot depend upon other people's faith and study. And so this has always been my emphasis. Because God is no respecter of persons. He does not, he's not any position or what we would call a place of honor, has no merit in God's kingdom. The only thing that matters is our obedience to God individually. We can't get into heaven on other people's coattails. So my encouragement for other people is I can look at my own life and I can see these structures and coincidences. And I think other people need to see that in the way that they study. So I don't expect everybody's going to find these things in chronology. But I find there that it's interesting that we can take a 2,730 days, which is a symbol of 273, and connect it to March 27th. And that to me is remarkable that that exists. For me, in my own life, it's something. It might not mean anything to anybody else. Now, we're going to look at the next slide, because I'm going to try to move along a little faster here. So this slide here goes back to November 9th, 1989. Now, this is an important point, and I just want to deal with it here because I don't really, well, I do here. So let's look at the next picture below, the line below. August 11th, 1840 is when Ellen White talks about the period from 1840 to 1844 as a wonderful manifestation of the power of God. And we, of course, all know about October 22nd, 1844, and August 11th. Now, August 11th, 1840, the message was empowered. And that was empowered by a fulfillment of prophecy, which is Revelation 9. And Josiah Litch is the one who made that prediction that the Ottoman Empire would fall on August 11th, 1840. If you count the number of days from August 11th, 1840 to October 22nd, 1844, you have 1,533 days. Ellen White compares this history here with the Exodus. And according to biblical chronology, the Exodus happened in 1533 BC. And she also calls it a wonderful manifestation of the power of God. So this number, 1,533 days, is very interesting as a symbol. And we're going to see why as we go on. Now, we know that the time of the end began with the Pope being taken captive on February 15th, 1798. We might not all know 1798. I mean, we all know 1798. We may not know it was February 15th. But if you count from February 15th to August 11th, it's 1,533 days plus 187 days. Now, this is significant. One is the 187 is a symbol of July 18th, but it's also the number of days from the first disappointment to the great disappointment. So April 19th, 1844 is the first day of the first month, and to October 22nd, 1844, which is the 10th day of the seventh month, is 187 days. And that symbol occurs here in this 1,533 days. Now here it ends after a period of 10 times 1533. So I actually have a mistake here I need to correct. I always make mistakes on my slides. So let's get that. I put 1533, but it's actually 15,330 and 87 days. So I'm going to correct that there. And go here again. So sorry about that, but sometimes when I present, I recognize the errors I made. So, is this making sense to people about the 1533? Does anybody have questions about this? That this becomes a symbol. And this symbol here is under the first angel's message, and this symbol here is under the second angel's message. So the first angel's message begins with the time of the end, February 15, 1798. The first angel's message arrives. And it becomes empowered on August 11th, 1840. And from August 11th, 1840, there's 1,533 days to October 22nd. So if we look at this now and we go up here and we look in our time of the end. So our time of the end is November 9th, 1989. This is Daniel 11:40b, where this, February 15th, 1798, is Daniel 11:40a. And I count 1,533 weeks, and this brings me to March 27th, 2019. And we know from March 27, 2019 to March 27, 21 is this period of 731 days. And the center of this is March 27th, 2020. And there's the 126 days again to July 31st. So this 731 days is a symbol of July 31st. So this message, which is to the Levites, which is to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is symbolized here. But also we can see that there's a wonderful manifestation of the power of God that occurred in this message. And that if we go back here, now this date, not everybody's familiar with it, but if we go from January 14th, 2017, that's when Jeff presented in Alberta here, near Warburg at Glen Park Hall, he presented Raphi and Panium for the first time. And it's 1,533 days to March 27th, 2021. And from that date, there's 273 days to the end of that, 777 days. So this 1,533 days and this 1,533 weeks both point to March 27th at the beginning and March 27th at the end. So, and we didn't create this date or any of these dates arbitrarily. The dates first arrived, and then we recognized and analyzed them. So Elder Jeff had marked January 14th, 2017, before he knew it was 1,533 days to March 27th. So any thoughts on that? I know I'm going through this in a little bit detailed, but I don't know if people are following it or not.
I'm following a little. You say like in 1988 is where Daniel 11:40 was opened, and in March 27, 2019, that Daniel 11 message is formalized in March 27, right?
Well, actually, there's more to it than that, because this March 27th here in 2019, what ended up happening is that Jeff went into hiding. He retired for 5 months. And he had passed over his leadership to Parminder, even though it wasn't his to pass over. That is, he didn't have the right to do that. And when that happened, this movement, the vast majority of these people went into apostasy. So March 27th is a mark of the end of the work that had been happening from 1989, those 30 years. That work began to be undermined on March 27th. I mean, it was being undermined, but on March 27th, Jeff had pushed himself out of the message for 5 months. And so this is a marvelous manifestation of the power of God, but it ends there as far as that message. But prefiguring that on January 4th, 2017, there was a message that was set aside. This message of January 14th, 2017 that Jeff presented was sidetracked in this history. So if you go from January 14th, 2017 to March 27th, 2019, that message that Raphi and Panium was taken over by Parminder and Tess, and then it was destroyed. So by the time you got to here, that message wasn't even relevant. All this message was about Islam, and by this period of time, Parminder and Tess had both rejected the July 18th, 2020 date and anything having to do with Islam as part of Bible prophecy. So we have to have that restored. So this is a period of time in which a message was developed, but then this message ends here. And then it's going to have to be restored. And it's now restored in our history here in the middle. And we're really getting clarity. As we move closer towards these dates, God is giving us more clarity and more confidence that he's been leading us. Does that help answer your question?
Yep, a little. But you said something about the Islam message. You said it's
yeah. So Islam. So we had actually learned back in 2015 that Islam was part of Bible prophecy in a way that it was going to be connected with what we call the midnight and the midnight cry. And when January 14th, 2017 happened, and Jeff presented Rafi and Peniam. He connected them with midnight and the midnight cry. And we now had more solid evidence that our prediction was about Islam and that they were attached to these dates. But what ended up happening is it got sidetracked. So it took time to get the message back on track of what Rafi and Peniam are about. They are battles between the North and the South, but Islam is part of that history. And so we can't ignore the role of Islam when it comes to Rafi and Peniam. I hope that's...
Because honestly, I've heard about Islam, but I always left it out because I only thought that it was only used once since November, actually 9/11.
Yes. So
And after that, I never used it again.
Yeah. So 9/11 was the beginning of the third woe. But the third woe has to end because the first woe had a beginning and an end. The second woe had a beginning and the end. So if the third woe arrived at 9/11, the question is, when does it end? That's what we're looking at, is the end of the third woe. Because at the end of the third woe, Islam will completely be restrained. That is...
So the third woe you say was 9/11? Is that the third or the...
Yeah. So September 9/11 is the beginning of the third woe. The seventh trumpet began to sound on October 22nd, 1844. But the third woe did not arrive on October 22nd, 1844. It didn't arrive until September 11th, 2001. So it arrived, and we're in the third woe, but the third woe has to end.
Okay, which is Revelation 18.
Yes, and yes, because it's tied up. The end of the third woe is tied up with the events of Revelation 8. Revelation 18 starts with the beginning of the third woe, but it also goes to the end of the third woe as well. So that's, there's a whole study on that, but the basic idea is that when we ignore Islam and we just say it was November or September 11th, 2001, then the question is, well, that's not what the prophecy says. The third woe has to begin and it has to end. These woes are always periods of time. And so we're now coming to the end of the third woe.
I hope I'm not slowing you guys down.
No. The questions are good. It helps keep me on track that people are following it, and any questions are good. Now I want to look at this next series of slides. Just a little more analysis about these. Okay, so what we see here, this is again these 3 March 27ths. This one that's connected to my first presentation. That's my first camp meeting presentation, was October 5th, which is 2,730 days to March 27th, 2020. And March 27th, or this one here, this is the center of the chiasm from October 13th to September 7th. So I'm not showing those dates here. That's where we got this March 27th. And then, so this is the third way mark here on this. That was my presentation. And it's 126 days to July 31st. So March 27th, 2020 is 126 days to July 31st, 2020. And then this last one is 252 days from July 18th, 2020, chiasm that begins on November 9th, 2019, and 153 days. So I'm just adding here from January 14th, 2017. So this is just kind of information. Now, I'm going to look at the bottom one. And this is the one where you probably have not seen this one presented. Now, January 14th, 2017, which we've dealt with. So this is when Elder Jeff presents Rafi and Peniam in Alberta. And we've already recognized it's 1,533 days to March 27th, 2021. Now, if we take 126 days, which we know is a symbol, and 273 days, and you add them together, they come up to 1,533 days. I'm not sure if how many of you have known this, but we've known it for a while, but we didn't really know what to do with it. And what it has done is it's shown us something in this chiasm here. So if we go to March 27th, 2021, we know it's 273 days to the Sunday law. December 25th, the 5's cut off there. December 25th, 2021. But also we can go back 273 days to June 27th, 2020. Now, I had looked at this June 27th, 2020, and other people have as well, because we thought, well, we can create a chiasm. You know, if we have a number of days, can we go back from those and arrive at a date? But what we didn't have at that time was a second witness. And the second witness is this 1,260 days from January 14th. Right? So you can see this 1,260 days here is not an arbitrary number. And since it's connected to this 1533 and this 273, marking June 27th, we can now say that June 27th is a waymark on our line. But the question is, what does June 27th symbolize? So if you were going to write June 27th, what number would you give it? Just like we take March 27th, we write it as 273. What's June 27th?
$276.
276. And this 276 comes from Acts 27, where the 276, 3 are subtracted from it. Aristarchus, Paul, and Mark are subtracted to get the 273. There's also
That's Luke.
What's that?
Wasn't it Luke?
That's Luke, not Mark.
That's what I knew. I was saying the wrong name. Thanks. Yeah, Luke. So Luke, Aristarchus, and Paul. So they're subtracted. So they become the priests, and the 273 become a symbol of the Levites. And there's lots in Acts 27, and a lot of misdirection too that was done regarding Acts 27. So when you look at Acts 27, don't depend on Tess's study of it, because she actually has some misdirection in there. But in Numbers chapter 3, we also see these numbers show up as well. So, you know, this is something that I have a study on. If people want to look at it, they can read through it. So this 276, notice that I had used it earlier dealing with going from 742 BC. So if I'm going to just get rid of this shared screen for a minute. I'm going to bring this up here. So here's, I mean, all this has been pretty dry, I realize. But what we want to really do is get to what this is telling us about our message. And so you remember I had taken this 2520 chiasm starting in 742 BC. And I'd shown that you can go to 1989, and this is a period of 2,730 years. But also I could go back, I could take this 30 years here to 2019, and this would bring us to November 9th, 2019. And this is November 9th. But I can go back here 2,760 years. So we have that symbol of the 276 and the 273 as part of this line. And of course, if we went to 1863, I'll just add this in, this is about the 26th day of the 4th month, right? So, and there's 126 years. So you can see these symbols show up in years, and we're applying them in various ways in regard to days on our line. Now, the period of time, which brought us to March 27th, 2019, this period here was 1,533 weeks. And so we know that this marks this March 29th, and I'm not going to write all these things in here, but the point that I want to make is we have this message that has been going on for a long time, and we have these this March 27th here, 2020, so I'm going to put where we're at. And I'm marking some waymarks into the future, and the one I want to look at here is June 27th. So June 27th is, yeah. Pardon me. It's 276, right? And so this number here is dealing with this history all the way to here, November 9th. This is our message. This is our movement. 276 represents both priests and Levites. Let's look at it that way. Because in the symbol in Acts 27, there's 273 plus 3 to equal 276. Or 276 minus 3 to equal 273. And this is about these two symbols, March 27th. Now this is 2020, of course. And we know that we can go here to March 27th, 2021, and we can have, pardon me, this is December 25th. I'm going ahead of myself. December 25th, 2021, and then we can put March 27th, 2021, and this is 273 days, and this is 273 days. So this June 27th has significance, but the significance lies here. It's 21 days to July 18th, 2020. And what is the 21 days a symbol of?
Midnight.
I can hear you, Stephen. What did you say? You have to turn your...
Midnight.
It's a symbol of midnight, yes. And where else do we see 21 days?
Daniel, when he was in vision, we've seen 21 days a whole lot of places. Ezekiel.
Mm-hmm. But Daniel, if we think about Daniel, because what is our message? What are we really focusing on in our message? What's our message about? What verses, what book?
Daniel 11, 40 to 45.
Right. Daniel 11, 40 to 45, and all of Daniel 11, because it's really, all of Daniel 11 is talking about Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45. Right? So, Daniel 11, the vision of Daniel 11 starts in Daniel chapter 10, and the 21 days is the time that Daniel prays, and he eats no pleasant bread, right? In this period here, he's fasting and praying. And on July 18th, 2020, we now see that there is this, this fulfillment of prophecy, where we're marking that Islam is going to attack the United States. And Daniel, during his 21 days of prayer, he is given a message, which is Daniel chapter 11. So what it means specifically, I don't know, but I do know that it means something. That this June 27th is not some arbitrary date. Do you have any thoughts on this, Stephen? I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself. You're still not unmuted.
It's the fifth day of the fourth month as well.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, I should have noticed that. I think I did, but I forgot about it. Did I mention it at all in any emails?
I'm not sure, but I had done a list. It's actually it's 2,000. Sorry, it's 3,910 weeks and 5 days from the test
Yeah.
in July 16, 1945.
Yeah. So
which is also the fifth day of the fourth month,
right.
1945.
So what Stephen is talking about, for those that aren't familiar, with the nuclear bomb that happened in 1945, we can count the number of days from the fifth day of the fourth month in 1945 was when they did the first nuclear test at Algamoro or something like that, someplace in Mexico. And it was also the fifth day of the fourth month. It was July 16th in that year. And the number of days that he's counting here is 3,000, well, it's the number of weeks, right? In 5 days. So it's 3,910, which has a symbol of 391 from Josiah Litch's prophecy and from Ezekiel's prophecy, and the 0.5. So this symbol here points to this date. So June 27th now makes sense in the context of these March 27th.
Theodore, can you quickly just explain to people how they get the fifth month or the fourth month to let them know where the year starts?
Well, as Seventh-day Adventists, we all know that October 22nd, 1844 is the 10th day of the seventh month, right? We should all know that. I don't know if you can see that. So down here. And if you count using the biblical calendar, the first day of the first month is April 19th, and that's the first disappointment. Now, in the very center of this, which is midway, was July 21st, 1844, in Boston. This is when Samuel Snow declared that it was midnight. Now, he didn't realize this was exactly halfway between the first day of the first month and the 10th day of the fifth month. He was just counting roughly 3 months and 3 months. But that date on the biblical calendar is the fifth day of the fourth month. So this is a symbol of midnight. Now 21 is a symbol of midnight. And you can see here on June 27th, now there's more to it here. This is actually the publication of Samuel Snow's third letter, which was written on June 22nd. But that's an aside. But this fifth day of the fourth month and the 21 days leading to here to July 18th, 2020, ties this all together. So this whole structure all becomes tied together. Now, the significance of these structures is really what I want to talk about. Now, there's some complexity here, obviously, in Ezekiel, when you see these wheels within wheels. Ellen White says that it's very complicated, but there's a perfect order in all of this. So God has a purpose in showing us these things, even if they're difficult to understand when you first see them. But as we deal, we're just past here. We're only 8 days past this date, and we're moving to June 27th. I believe that we're going to have a crisis of our faith as we get closer and closer to July 18th. I know I will. And this is really a time in which we need to be praying. This is a time in which, and I'm not sure if we could use "he ate no pleasant bread" as some kind of symbol rather than to take it literally. And whether there's going to be, some kind of persecution that exists within Adventism here regarding the coming date, I don't know. So I'm not great at figuring out what everything means. I can figure out the numbers. But I do think that, I can say that this is significant. That June 27th is not something that we it's just a mark on the line that happens to be 273 days from March 27th. It's obviously fits in with this entire structure. So is there any thoughts on this? Any questions?
March 27. What's the first one you have written to the front there? March what?
March
24?
27th, 2020, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm just showing this is where we have just passed. And we know there's a March 27, 2021 that comes after July 18th. That's obviously 252 days. After July 18th is March 27th, 2021.
Like, my thoughts on it is like the priest is going to the Levites to formalize that message, and like I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, just trying to put it, like you said, you figure out the numbers, but sometimes I figure out some of the events and how it happens. It's like the priest goes to the Levites, which is March. I cannot properly see what you have there before the 21 days. The waymark you have there. June 28th.
June 27th.
June 27th.
Yeah.
When the priests and the Levites are there, so there's a message has been formalized before they have to go to the church.
Exactly. So something's happening. We're right now developing this message, and as we approach July 18th, which is the main prediction, God is giving us clarity so that we can open it up. So one is we need clarification for ourselves, and we need assurance for ourselves, because we're giving a very difficult message. We're putting our necks on the line by making a prediction. And, many people look at this as time setting, though this has nothing to do with the second coming of Christ directly. There's none of these events are forbidden in the spirit of prophecy to set dates for. We're not setting a date for the close of probation for the world or the second coming or anything like that. But we are putting our necks on the line. And obviously here, this is when it's going to open up to give the message to Seventh-day Adventists. This is actually in the period of that 100 days of prayer still. June 27th is before July, because theirs ends on July 4th. So if you go from June 27th to July 4th, it's 7 days. So there's this period of time in here in which we have
It's a week.
Yeah, it's a week. So this first week here is where the 100 days of prayers ends. After the first week from the 5th day of the 4th month. So I think that something's going to happen here, but what it is, I don't know. So I think it's not just an internal event, but it's something that happens within Adventism. That opens up the door for this message. Yes, some thoughts there?
No, I said it could be a last statement, because you say that, and it just reminds me of the story of Noah. When he preached for 120 days, and after, before the door was shut, and there was like 7 days after before the rain fall.
Yeah.
And
Then another 7 days. No, 8 right here.
I'm just trying to put everything together, but it's so much.
Well, and if we compared this to, midnight and, midnight cry type of thing, because this is a symbol of midnight. Obviously, in this period here, we're going to have an empowerment of this message. But there still has to be something that opens the door here for us to get our message further to Seventh-day Adventists. Right? Because that's the problem that we're having now. I mean, right now we've had the door open a bit with this pandemic, because Adventists aren't going to church. So they're now watching videos like this. And we didn't have that opportunity before. Everybody was just going about. Plus, it's also woken them up as far as something is happening. Like, I can't imagine a Seventh-day Adventist, I mean, there probably are some, who just doesn't think that this has anything to do with the end time or the Sunday law or the last days. You have to admit that this unprecedented event is definitely shocking to Adventists, and many people are now searching. And during that 100 days of prayer, I believe that many sincere Adventists will be digging for light in this history, try to understand truth, and they'll be open to watch videos. Okay, somebody had a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment, Theodore. And in Genesis 7:4, as that brother had just referred to, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth. There's a 7:4 there. So July 4th, 7:4 from 6:27.
Excellent. Yeah. Stephen should have noticed that, but he didn't.
I have a question.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I've been kind of in and out and haven't been able to follow very well.
Yeah.
What happened on March 27th, just a little bit ago?
The 100 days of prayer began for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
That was the day that the prayer began. So what is March 14th not on the line at all anymore?
May.
I mean, May 14th, sorry.
I think May 14th is on the line, but that was May 14th was the date that the Pope had chosen for all the world leaders to come to Rome and to meet and deal with a number of things, you know, education, the environment. But of course, we know that that would be about a Sunday law. So this pandemic has put a damper on that, and they've moved it to October this year. But I still think March 14th is on that line. Now, one of the things about it is the feast day for the Saint Corona. Now, Saint Corona is not the saint, the patron saint of pandemics, as you'll see on the internet. They say that because there was some person who prayed to her during the pandemic, but she's actually the patron saint of gamblers. So I'm not sure why gamblers need patron saints, but do you know much about the saints there, Stephen, living up in Ireland?
I think she's more the saint of something to do with, it's to do with money.
Yeah.
I think it's treasure hunting.
Treasure hunting, yeah. Treasure hunting and gamblers. So.
Well, I think gambling is more like an interpretation people put on it, but I think treasure hunting is maybe more, yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is just a comment. Trump owns a lot of those casino places there, you know, with money and stuff. And then also Ted Wilson received, I don't know, $25 million was it last year for Loma Linda from those same kind of businesses. I just thought I'd add that.
Not really. Yeah, so businesses are shut down right now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as far as the you know, Las Vegas is shut down, right? So, but anyway, I don't know about the significance necessarily.
I have one more question, Theodore. So you know our friend joined last night?
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the whole time I was like freaking out. I'm like, because he hasn't heard any of this stuff, right? So I'm thinking, I'm just sharing thoughts because I'm sure other people are having these thoughts.
Yeah.
If people join in on these things and they seem more applicable, like a lot of the stuff on the line is things that Jeff has done, things that you have done, things that Daniel has done. And so most of these people don't have any idea about any of these events. So if they're walking into this and they've never, I mean, they don't really have much of an opinion of you or Jeff or Daniel or any of these people. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how it's going to work for Levites to just start joining in on these studies.
Well, I don't think that they're going to start here. So part of what I'm planning to do is to have studies where I go through the story of Joseph. I go through the start of the 2300 days and the 70 weeks, Ezra 7 to 10. So I want to take Adventists through things that they're familiar with, but for them to see them in another way. And so that's my plan, to start doing regular Zoom studies during this period of time of the quarantine.
So like our friend, he was insistent because I said, you know, they're like halfway through the study. It's pretty advanced. I can't even understand a lot of it. No, I want to listen. I want to listen. So do we still invite people to listen to these things or not?
Yeah, I'd invite people because even though if they don't understand everything, when these things come to pass, they will have heard some of it, right? So yeah, you could, if they want to listen, I mean, I'm going to be inviting people, but I do want them to go to the simpler studies first. I'm not saying that I can actually do a simple study, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
You know, there are things that I presented to Adventists, and they see it right away. You know, Ezra 7 to 10, and other things. You know, and also Millerite history. When I show Adventist Millerite history in connection with Ezra 7 to 10, you know, they just say, well, this is amazing. You know, why don't we know this stuff? So there is a way to do it. Yeah, throwing them in the middle of something where we're dealing with symbols that we've already established how we're doing it, it would just seem like seeing Ezekiel's first vision. You know, the wheels within the wheels.
Right. And it makes me concerned. I don't want to just scare them off after the first thing they see, you know, and they think.
I never ever worry about that.
No.
Never worry about scaring people off, because one is we're in the time in which that message is going to get to them one way or the other.
Right. If I may ask this, Brother or Pastor Mark Johnson, you're fairly new to all this. Are you scared by any of it, or are you understanding it? Brother Mark?
I don't know. Is he listening still?
I'm still listening. Sorry, I was trying to talk and I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, the question was I scared or bothered about all of this?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because I think the biggest thing the media's forgotten to do, let alone the medical community, is to alert people that are susceptible to improving their immune systems through natural means. Now, one thing that really perturbed me was the fact that a doctor came on some time ago, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, and this is also online as well, saying that ginger and lemon and honey and so forth do not boost your immunity. That is a lie. That is not true. These things have been used for hundreds of years. Now, I have a clinical research background. Yeah, 22 years, 19 of which was last spent in ophthalmology, researching glaucoma studies, right? And I can tell you 28 years of my life was spent on linking the disease between, or linking the relationship between dietary delinquency and disease. So what these people are telling you is an utter lie. And furthermore, zinc is a mineral that is often overlooked and underrated. And zinc is a very important mineral at that. Zinc is responsible for inhibiting the replication of rhinovirus, which is a cold virus. And it does this with influenza virus as well, because the virus has to dock in the nasal pharynx of the body, which is where the back of the nasal passage meets the back of the mouth. When you take zinc, it prevents that virus from docking at the back of that part of the body where it can replicate and wreak havoc across your body. So,
right.
So small things like your vitamin C's and your vitamin D and zinc and your lemon, honey, and ginger, these are natural things that can boost you. So I don't know where they're coming up with this nonsense.
But in terms of what Theodore presents, the message that Theodore,
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
In terms of the message that Theodore is presenting,
yes.
Are you understanding it since you have an Adventist background?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm understanding most of it so far, because these numbers are lining up beautifully. I mean, it's beyond coincidence. The correlation is irrefutable.
Right. So then, what I was trying to establish here, I don't know if it was Michelle or if it was Patty that was speaking.
Yeah.
To be concerned of people who Adventists who are just hearing this for the first time. So I was just trying to use you to speak for others.
Oh yeah, well, I think my advantage is that I've always been in close contact with Louis and Joanne Baylog and Kathy and Colin Joseph, so they've given me back. And plus, I've listened to Jeff Pippinger and Daniel Fontenot. I can never say his last name. Fontenay, I think the last name is. There you go. And Larry Hind, I believe. So I've been keeping up with these videos for months and months and months. So these things do make a tremendous amount of sense to me.
Okay. Well, really good. So I guess you're speaking for others. I'll let Theodore carry on.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the points about it that he
just a question, guys.
Okay, Kelly.
It's not Mark Johnson, Canadian Union President, is it?
No, no. No.
I thought that last week, but since
Yeah.
then I know.
Okay. Where do you live, Mark?
I live in Stony Plain, Alberta.
Okay. We'll meet one day.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm in Calgary.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Carry on. Thanks, Theodore.
Yeah. So the point that he brought up that I think is important is that these things, they fit together in such a way that they're beyond coincidence. And that's the thing that I find about the chronology, is that it's something that's more objective rather than, many things that people can present, they can seem sort of speculative, or, you're stretching things. But when you start looking at the numbers, you start looking at the chronology of the Bible, and you see that, Ezekiel begins his prophecy on the 5th day of the 4th month, and you connect that with Millerite history, and that it's the same date in the biblical and the Julian calendar. That's July 21st. And then you show that his last vision is October 22nd, 573 BC, and that it's the 10th day of the 7th month. So these types of things, Ellen White says people are not going to be won so much by argument, but by the unction of the Holy Spirit. And that's the thing that we have to rely on. Even though we're studying these things and we have to be diligent students and we have to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, we have to recognize that we are in a time where we're giving a message of warning. And if you're going to be worried about, somebody who's about to fall off a cliff, that they might reject you or they might disregard what you're saying, but it's an urgent message. We have a very short period of time to give this message to Seventh-day Adventists. We've talked about the end of time, the Sunday law, and all these things for years as Seventh-day Adventists. Now we're in the midst of this. Things are getting very serious. And so we have to get mobilized and start working to get this message to those that we know in Seventh-day Adventism. And we have to allow that God's going to open up the door for that. And we have to do the work now. Maybe we won't see the results for a while, but definitely as we move through this history, we're going to start to see the results of all this study. And it's going to amaze us what actually happens. So we shouldn't be fearful. God has prepared this message, and he's preparing the people to hear this message. And so that's our work to do. We have to get busy at it. Right now we have this opportunity, an amazing opportunity, when we're stuck in our homes, to be writing letters, to emails to friends, connecting with people on Facebook and other social media, to phoning people that we haven't talked to, and inviting people to meetings. So I think it's something that we really have to consider. Now, Stephen, I'm interested if you have any insights that I've missed.
About the 27th of March.
Yes. Well, and yeah, this study on March 27th.
I have a few things, but nothing significant.
Oh, you
No.
sure it's nothing significant? Well, write me an email then.
Yeah, okay.
Because, this 5th day of the 4th month was pretty significant.
Well, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That would be worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody else had a comment?
I have a question to Theodore and Stephen. Now, we know on the 27th, March 27th, the Seventh-day Adventist Church started 100 days of prayer, which will end in June, the time when
July 4th it ends.
Okay, just about when the GC was supposed to start, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand, did they put out an objective of what we should be praying for, or is it just a blanket word of go pray?
Well, I mean, part of it's the coronavirus situation, but I think it was really a more open type of 100 days of prayer. Anything having to do with this message, with the church, with the world. So yeah, it didn't seem like anything I read on it that it was just, here's what you pray for every day. Just a period of time, 100 days of prayer.
Now, I'm also wondering, if we look back and we had 1888 and then 1988, and with that celebration with the centennial of 1888, I am sort of, it has crossed my mind several times, but I don't know where to go with it. The centennial was a 100-year celebration, and then we're seeing this 100 days of prayer. So it's almost like the centennial celebration in 1988 is basically a fail, and then they did it in 1989. I'm wondering if there could be any correlation with that.
Well, there's probably some correlation. I mean, the church is trying to revive itself, but it's rejected the light that's actually going to cause revival. In 1988, they'd actually rejected the message of 1888. So, for that anniversary, George Knight had written a book called From 1888 to Apostasy, where he laid down his thesis that Jones and so in 1988, for those of you who were maybe missed some of it, 1988, the Adventist Church had rejected the 1888 message, and so George R. Knight had written this book called From 1888 to Apostasy and laid out his thesis that Adventism had accepted the 1888 message and that Jones and Wagner were teaching fanaticism. And that's the beginning of his thesis that developed into the idea that the idea of last generation theology is the danger to the church. This idea that we can overcome sin, that when Christ's character is perfectly reproduced in his people, then shall he come to claim them as his own. This is actually seen as a great danger in Adventism by the vast majority of our leadership. So the things that we believe in about the 1888 message, overcoming sin, these are seen as fanaticism. So in 1988, they had rejected that message. And we're going to see with this 100 days of prayer, whether there's a correlation between the 100 years and the 100 days, I would think there probably is to some degree. But this 100 days of prayer would not accomplish what the church wants to accomplish. But it is an opportunity for the sincere in heart, because many of the people who are actually going to spend time praying are those who are really looking for light. For a lot of Adventists, this is all just show, 100 days of prayer, different things. These are just formalisms that don't really mean anything. But God is giving an opportunity to the Seventh-day Adventist Church to receive the light that they rejected. Not so much the leadership, because we know on July 31st, the 10th day of the 5th month, certain of the elders of Israel come and sit before us to inquire of the Lord. And the message that we have to give them is that Jerusalem is destroyed. Jerusalem is not going to survive. And so I think it's regarding, more people are coming online, that the church has, it doesn't know what it's doing. This 100 days of prayer, they have what this actually means to Adventism. So Adventism now has an opportunity to recognize something that they have not ever recognized, and that's that they are not in a saved condition. The most Seventh-day Adventists assume that they are, but they are not. Kelly had.
Kelly is asking that you unmute him.
Who unmutes him?
Well, the host usually can do that.
Oh, okay. So, where's Kelly?
He's unmuted though, so he should be able to speak.
Muted. You're not muted, Kelly. I'm not sure why. We're not hearing you.
So Theodore, have you concluded your study, or did we distracted you?
No, we're just concluding it, because this study is really about what it is that we have to do in this period of time, because that is the important point. It's not about a bunch of numbers on the board. It's about God's people and the message to God's people. And what I'm trying to do is encourage people to mobilize and realize the opportunity that God has given you. We cannot just coast through this time thinking that, well, we're going to wait till July 18th and see what happens. We have to give this message. because this is the burden that's been given to us, and it's got to be to Seventh-day Adventists. And even if things don't work out the way that we imagine, God is in control, and He has a purpose in all of this. And so, I mean, I believe it's going to happen. What's that?
I have another question.
Yes.
So I'm not very scholarly. You probably do this all the time. I was at a Mennonite friend's house just yesterday and talking, and I just put it out there that our country's weak and there's probably going to be a terrorist attack happen very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said that it was going to be coming out of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a wrong approach to just tell people that there's going to be a nuclear attack that happens to Nashville without giving them all this information?
Yeah. I've been telling people, at the guitar store, people who work there, customers, I've been telling them about July 18th. Some of them look at me sideways, but you'd be surprised at how many people say that makes a lot of sense.
So I added in there that as Seventh-day Adventist, we had a prophet in the 1800s that had visions, and she predicted that happening in Nashville. Do you think that's a wise thing to say to people or not?
Yes.
Okay.
I think right now we have to say as much as we can to everybody who will listen, because we're planting seeds that will bear fruit once those events occur. If somebody knows that we predicted an event and it happens, they're much more likely to listen to us later on.
Well, for me,
for
me, I've been sharing, but I also test the temperature of the person.
Oh yeah.
To see if how they respond. So I says, with what's happening, it's the U.S. will be attacked. And if they ask a question to say, well, why do you say that? So I almost bait them to look for engagement.
Yeah.
And that's how I continue.
Yeah.
So Michelle, it's I don't even think it's about scholarly. I think it's more or less, if we've been around the message, if we have an honest heart, I believe if we doing our part, the Lord, He said He will give us what we need in that time, at that time. And I claim those promises because most of the times I don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. So something that is on my mind, so I'll ask it. So in 9/11, I know we talk about the leadership of the Adventist Church being passed by because a lot of them don't believe that 9/11 was any significant event. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about now these days of prayer and at the end, help me to understand the difference there between the people that were passed by at 9/11 and what we're dealing with now.
No people were passed by. The leadership was passed by. The leadership is a symbol. The leadership is not going to be restored. It's not going to survive. It was passed by, as far as also giving the message, giving the light. So the leaders were passed by at the time of Christ. When He was born, they went to the shepherds. This message in 1989, the leadership dropped the ball. On 1989, they dropped the ball on 9/11. But as individuals, every person has an opportunity to hear the message and accept it. The message, when they come to us as a leadership saying, what's happening, they inquire of the Lord, we tell them that Jerusalem is destroyed. We don't tell them that, if they repent, that they're going to get their church back, because they're not. The church is going to be gone. Sunday law is going to destroy the church as an organization.
As they know it.
Does not destroy God's people.
Right.
Right? The sinners in Zion will be sifted out. Right? And then only the precious wheat will remain. And that is the church that will be lifted up as an ensign to give a message to the world. So, yeah, it's not about the leadership. And I've never taken the position that, individuals in the leadership, that we can judge that they're passed by because they don't understand the truth right now or don't accept it. There's many, many people in the church who, when the time comes, will accept this message And my view has always been that, right now we have a little ragtag bunch of people in this message. But many great men will come in, people who are much more skilled and have abilities that we don't have to give a message to the world. We're not going to be at the forefront as individuals in giving this message to the world. We're really nobodies, and we're not very talented. We don't have very great skills to do this. So God is going to raise up people from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, men of experience and learning, who are going to be empowered by the Holy Spirit for the first time in their lives. And all the training that they've had will be used in giving a message to the world. So, and that's my view, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll probably close here because it's getting pretty late.
Kelly's trying to talk.
And Kelly wants to say something, but
Can he type it?
Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
Don't know.
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't hear Kelly.
Right. But Theodore, I guess we should officially close, as you say. But what we normally do on our Thursday night sessions, we leave it open for a bit for those, if somebody had any questions or they were a little shy to
We can
speak
do that.
earlier.
So let's close with prayer. And I want to hear an Irish accent for the prayer. we really miss you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're in Ireland, not in Alberta. It's so cold up here. But okay.
Right, okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we give thanks for your love for us, that you've enabled us to be aware of a message concerning your soon coming, that you're leading us to an understanding concerning calendars and dates. And the world is in a crisis, and I pray that you enable us to be skilled and inspired by your Holy Spirit to share this message. I pray that we can have our lives consecrated to you, for this world is soon to end, and you created us and we belong to you, and we're nothing without you, and we love you, and we ask that your blessing upon us as we seek to study further this message. We ask for more light, for your latter rain, that it just not be about dates, but an impelling power accompany this message. And I pray that to your glory that we can have a great sense of your presence as we go and share these things. Keep us safe this Sabbath day. Keep us through this year crisis. Protect us and give us wisdom. And I pray your blessing upon the rest of this Sabbath day. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Everybody, next Sabbath is going to be the regular Three Angels Fellowship Church with Sabbath and so forth, I believe. So, because every second Sabbath we have that. So anyway, thanks for everybody who's participated, and if anybody has any questions, maybe to some of the other people, you can ask them.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Kelly.
Okay, now I'm going through my phone. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Anyway.
Hi, Kelly. Happy Sabbath.
Yes, Sabbath blessings, everyone. Okay, so I was going to say about 1988 when they had the what do they call that, century or whatever.
Oh, so Kelly, sorry. Theodore or whoever is recording, can we stop it at this point, please?
No, the recording stopped. It stopped when it shut down there earlier, so.
Well, the recording button is still flashing on my computer.
Oh.
It's still on mine too.
Oh, never. Okay, so I was wrong.
Okay, thanks.
How do I close that? I guess I go